There's something haunting about the silence of ancient ruins, the way the stones seem to hold their breath, guarding secrets older than memory itself. Picture this: you're standing in the shadow of a temple built thousands of years ago, its walls etched with symbols that defy translation. But the real mystery isn't just what's carved into the surface, it's what lies hidden beneath your feet. Deep within the foundations of these sacred structures, architects left behind cryptic messages, carefully concealed like treasures meant only for the worthy. Why would they go to such lengths to bury their words in the dark, where no one could easily see them? The answer is more fascinating than you might think. From the pyramids of Egypt to the temples of India, these hidden inscriptions weren't mere decorations. They were deliberate, almost urgent communications, a way to speak across time itself. Some held sacred geometry, precise mathematical codes believed to unlock divine knowledge. Others carried warnings, prophecies, or even blueprints for rebuilding civilizations after catastrophe. But perhaps most intriguing of all are the messages that seem to address us the future, as if the builders knew one day someone would dig deeper, look closer, and finally understand what they couldn't say aloud. This is the untold story of ancient architects and their secret language of stone. Today, we're peeling back the layers of history to uncover why these hidden messages exist, what they reveal about the minds who created them, and how they've survived centuries of wars, natural disasters, and human curiosity. Along the way, you'll discover how a single symbol buried in a temple's foundation could rewrite our understanding of an entire civilization. So let's begin where the architects themselves began, not at the towering peaks of their creations, but in the quiet, forgotten depths below. Because sometimes the most profound truths aren't written in the light, they're waiting in the dark. Imagine engraving a message meant to endure for millennia. What words would you choose? For ancient architects, these hidden inscriptions weren't casual notes but vital lifelines, carefully selected to serve purposes we're only beginning to decipher. Take sacred geometry, for instance. Beneath temples like Cambodia's Angkor Wat or Greece's Parthenon, builders embedded precise mathematical ratios mirroring cosmic patterns. These weren't just artistic choices, they were spiritual anchors tying earthly structures to the movements of stars and planets. A temple aligned with the solstice wasn't just a building, it became a living calendar, a bridge between humanity and the heavens. Then there were the protective incantations. In Egypt, the foundations of Karnak Temple concealed hieroglyphs invoking deities to shield the site from desecration. These weren't idle threats, they were psychological fortresses designed to deter looters with the fear of divine retribution. Similarly, beneath Mayan pyramids, archaeologists found curses woven into stone, warning that disturbing the site would unleash chaos. The architects understood something profound. To preserve sacred spaces, you had to guard them with more than walls. You needed the weight of belief. But perhaps most astonishing are the time capsule's messages meant explicitly for future generations. Beneath Roman temples, builders left copper scrolls detailing construction techniques, as if anticipating that one day their methods might be forgotten. In India, stepwells hid encrypted blueprints within their foundations, ensuring that even if surface structures crumbled, the knowledge to rebuild them wouldn't vanish. These weren't just practical records, they were acts of faith in continuity, a dialogue across centuries whispering, "We were here, and this is how you carry forward what we began." What unites all these messages is their urgency. Whether celestial codes, divine warnings, or survival manuals, each was deemed essential enough to bury beyond the reach of casual eyes. They tell us that for ancient architects, knowledge wasn't just power. It was sacred trust, something too precious to leave to chance. And as we uncover their hidden words, we're not just decoding symbols, we're stepping into a conversation meant to outlast empires. Deep beneath the polished limestone casing of the Great Pyramid, where the air hums with the weight of centuries, workers left behind faint scratches that would one day rewrite history. These quarry marks, seemingly simple hieroglyphs etched into the hidden inner blocks, were long dismissed as mundane builders' notes, but when researchers finally deciphered them, they revealed something extraordinary. The symbols didn't just tally stone quantities or mark work shifts, they mirrored the night sky with uncanny precision, aligning with constellations like Orion's belt. This wasn't random graffiti, it was a celestial blueprint, a silent conversation between Earth and stars. What's even more astonishing is how these markings transcend mere alignment. Some clusters form geometric patterns that correspond with sacred numbers, ratios found in nature, from the spiral of a nautilus shell to the orbit of planets. A handful of theorists argue these aren't just architectural guides but encrypted equations, perhaps even fragments of a lost science promising eternal life. The ancient Egyptians believed names held power, that words could outlast death itself. Could these hidden glyphs be a kind of spell, weaving immortality into the very bones of the pyramid? Then there's the tantalizing possibility of undiscovered spaces. Certain quarry marks appear in sequences that don't match known chambers, fueling speculation about sealed rooms still waiting to be found. French archaeologist Jean-Pierre Houdin noticed markings near the pyramid's base that suggest hidden corridors, possibly even the fabled Hall of Records, said to hold the wisdom of a forgotten epoch. Whether myth or reality, one thing is clear: the architects didn't carve these symbols for their contemporaries. They buried them like time capsules, trusting that the right eyes, centuries later, would grasp their meaning. What makes these codes so compelling isn't just their mystery, but their intentional obscurity. Unlike the grand hieroglyphs adorning temple walls, meant to awe and instruct, quarry marks were deliberately placed where only builders or destiny might find them. It's as if the pyramid's creators understood that some truths are too potent to display openly, that real knowledge often hides in the margins, waiting for those willing to dig deeper. And as modern technology like muon tomography scans reveal voids we can't yet explain, we're left wondering, how many more messages are still buried, whispering beneath 4,000 years of silence? In the sun-baked plains of India, where the temples of Konark and Khajuraho rise like stone hymns to the divine, the real secrets don't gleam from the ornate spires, they lie buried underfoot. Known as Bod Shillelagh, these foundation inscriptions are more than just historical records. They're deliberate transmissions, etched in Sanskrit with the precision of a master jeweler setting diamonds. One slab describes celestial events so accurately that modern astronomers have used it to recalibrate ancient star charts. Another details medicinal formulas so advanced, researchers are still testing their efficacy against modern diseases. But the most haunting, a prophecy carved into the base of Konark's Sun Temple, predicting a cataclysmic flood, not as myth, but as a precise warning complete with tidal measurements and survival advice. Why embed such vital knowledge where almost no one would see it? The answer may lie in the Vedic concept of cyclic time, the belief that civilizations rise and fall in great waves. Unlike Western linear history, Hindu cosmology sees time as a wheel, eternally turning. The architects of these temples weren't just building for their era, they were preparing for epochs they knew would follow. The Bod Shillelagh functioned like seed banks for human knowledge, preserving rituals, astronomy, and medicine in the one place likely to survive wars and erosion. beneath dozens of feet of stone and earth. Some inscriptions take this foresight even further. At Khajuraho, beneath a lesser-known shrine, a tablet lists the ingredients for an herbal antidote to black smoke that chokes the breath, a description chillingly similar to modern chemical warfare. Nearby, another details a method for purifying water using specific metals and solar energy, a technique now being studied for sustainable filtration. These weren't random acts of preservation. They were survival manuals deliberately encrypted in Sanskrit's complex grammar to prevent misuse. The most compelling theory, however, centers on alignment. Just as Egypt's pyramid builders encoded celestial maps, Vedic architects embedded astronomical data into foundation stones. At Konark, certain inscriptions correlate with the temple's shadow patterns during equinoxes, acting as a backup navigation system should the surface carvings weather away. It's as if the builders anticipated not just political collapse, but the slow erosion of memory itself, and chose the language of mathematics as their time capsule. What emerges from these buried texts isn't just technical brilliance, but a profound humility. These architects, capable of constructing monuments that defy modern engineering, still doubted their surface artistry would endure. So they hid wisdom in the dark, trusting that when humanity needed it most, someone would dig deep enough to listen. The flower of life carved into the temple walls of Abydos isn't just an intricate design, it's a mathematical whisper from the ancient world. This six-petaled pattern, repeated in sacred sites from China to Ireland, encodes ratios found in the very fabric of nature, the spacing of tree branches, the arrangement of sunflower seeds, even the double helix of DNA. When architects buried these symbols beneath their monuments, they weren't decorating stone, they were mapping the universe's hidden blueprint. Take the Parthenon, where every column's spacing follows the golden ratio, that mystical number approximately equal to 1.618. But here's what most miss. The builders didn't just use this proportion for beauty. They embedded it vertically too, in the ratio of floor levels to roof height, creating a three-dimensional harmonic resonance. Contemporary researchers discovered that spaces designed with these proportions actually affect brainwave patterns, inducing states of calm focus. Was this the Greeks' real secret? Not just worshipping the gods, but architecting spaces that could alter human consciousness to better commune with them. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, Mayan engineers were threading sacred math into their pyramids' very bones. The steps of El Castillo at Chichen, Itza aren't merely stairs, they're a celestial calculator. With 91 steps on each of 4 sides plus the shared platform step, they total 365, mirroring the solar year. But descend into the hidden substructure, and you'll find step counts marking Venus's 584-day cycle and even eclipse predictions. These weren't just calendars, they were stone textbooks preserving astronomy where books could burn. Perhaps most enigmatic is gematria, the Greek practice of assigning numerical values to letters. In the foundation stones of Ephesus's Temple of Artemis, archaeologists found inscriptions where names of gods equaled the same sums as geometric terms, Apollo's name numerically matching the word for harmony, Athena's equating to wisdom. This wasn't wordplay, it was a cryptographic language suggesting that numbers and divinity were fundamentally intertwined. Why this global obsession with geometric codes? Because ancient cultures saw shapes as more than lines, they were living metaphors. The circle represented eternity's endless loop. The square symbolized earthly stability and their intersection. The meeting point of heaven and earth. By hiding these patterns in foundations, architects weren't just leaving messages, they were anchoring their temples to the invisible forces they believed governed reality. And as quantum physics now reveals the geometric patterns underlying atomic structures, we're left wondering, were they merely praying to the cosmos, or did they somehow understand its deepest architecture? Beneath the bustling streets of modern Rome, where tourists tread unknowingly over history, early Christians left a trail of silent signals, desperate breadcrumbs for those who knew how to read them. When worshipping openly meant death, they turned the city's very foundations into a clandestine map. A simple fish symbol scratched into a catacomb wall might seem like random graffiti, but to the initiated, it whispered directions to hidden gatherings. The Greek word for fish, ichthys, doubled as an acronym. Isus Christos Theouios Soter, a Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior. To carve it was to risk everything to find it meant sanctuary. But these markers evolved into something far more potent. By the 4th century, as Christianity emerged from persecution, builders began sealing relics, bone fragments of saints, shreds of martyrs' robes beneath church altars. This wasn't just tradition, it transformed stone into sacred conduits. Byzantine architects believed these embedded objects charged structures with spiritual energy, turning buildings into literal vessels of divine power. The Hagia Sophia's very cornerstone reportedly contained wood from Noah's Ark, linking the new faith to ancient salvation myths. What's striking is how these hidden elements shaped worship itself. Cryptic symbols forced believers to develop a language of subtlety, where a loaf of bread in a fresco wasn't just food but the Eucharist, where a shepherd with a lamb on his shoulders signaled Christ's sacrifice. This visual code didn't just protect the faithful, it bound them together in shared secrecy, creating intimacy that public rituals couldn't replicate. Even after Constantine legalized Christianity, the habit of concealment persisted. Builders still tucked symbols into foundations, not out of fear now, but as a spiritual safeguard, a way to armor faith against future upheavals. Perhaps the most ingenious survival tactic was architectural mimicry. Early Roman churches often repurposed pagan temples, but their true power lay underground. Beneath San Clement Basilica, excavations revealed a Mithraic temple, a rival cult sanctuary directly below the Christian altar. By building vertically, the new faith didn't erase the old. It literally overshadowed it, burying competing beliefs under layers of stone and symbolism. These hidden marks did more than preserve a religion, they redefined how faith interacts with space. When you kneel in a centuries-old chapel today, you're participating in an unbroken chain of devotion that began with furtive scratches in the dark. The architects of persecution built for eternity not through grandeur, but through whispers in stone, proving that sometimes the quietest symbols shout the loudest across time. The Augsburg ship's keel wasn't just carved wood, it was a battlefield of hidden intentions. When archaeologists first brushed away centuries of grime, they uncovered runes etched deep into the timber, not for decoration but as a silent plea to the gods. May Thor hallow this vessel, one inscription read, a spell woven into the very bones of the ship. But here's the twist, these weren't just blessings. Scattered among the invocations were darker marks, curses aimed at any who dared desecrate the tomb it carried. The message was clear, this ship wasn't merely a vessel for the dead, it was a locked door guarded by divine fury. Viking runestones took this duality further. Take the Rök stone in Sweden, its surface a labyrinth of runes twisting like serpentine knots. At first glance, it recounts heroic deeds, but beneath the mortar lies a second layer, a cipher only deciphered in the 21st century. The hidden text doesn't speak of battles, it warns of an impending climate catastrophe, a sunless summer that would bring famine. Was this prophecy or observation? The Norse didn't distinguish. To them, words carved in stone weren't just records. They were active forces shaping reality as surely as axes shaped timber. The practicality of these hidden messages reveals a culture obsessed with legacy. Gravestones in Jelling, Denmark, bore runes promising vengeance from beyond the grave, not poetic metaphor, but legal contracts with the afterlife. A thief who broke into a burial mound wouldn't just face earthly justice. He'd awaken the dead's wrath, spelled out in exacting detail. Meanwhile, trading posts like Burqa hid ownership marks beneath floorboards, turning humble planks into legal documents. Lose a shipment, the runes beneath your feet could testify against you in the thing, the Viking assembly. But the most fascinating layer is the magical. Iceland's sagas tell of Nistörð runes carved backward or inverted to hide their power from the uninitiated. A ship's mast might bear a seemingly random sequence, but reverse the order, and it became a wind charm, bending gusts to the captain's will. These weren't mere superstitions, they were a form of applied metaphysics where symbolism altered material outcomes. When a rune master buried a curse under a doorway, he wasn't just threatening, he was architecting fate itself. What unites these examples is their subterfuge. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs or Sanskrit steles, Norse hidden messages often masqueraded as mundane scratches on a tool, patterns in a wall's mortar. Their power lay in their secrecy, in the knowledge that the most potent truths were reserved for those who knew where and how to look. In a world where ice and fire constantly reshaped the land, the Vikings trusted neither memory nor parchment. They wrote their history where only the worthy or the desperate would think to search. The ancient world's obsession with hidden messages wasn't just about secrecy, it was a high-stakes game of intellectual chess. Take Leonardo da Vinci's mirror writing, famously used in his notebooks, but few realize this technique predated him by millennia. Egyptian priests in the Temple of Horus at Edfu inscribed prayers backward along the inner sanctum's foundation stones. When candlelight flickered against polished bronze mirrors placed ritualistically at dawn, the reflections revealed sacred texts meant only for high priest's eyes. This wasn't mere trickery. It transformed reading into an act of divine revelation, where knowledge came not from simple sight, but from ritualized effort. Halfway across the world, Mesopotamian builders took concealment even further. Beneath the gates of Nineveh, archaeologists found lead scrolls rolled tighter than a pinky finger, pressed into brickwork before the mortar hardened. These weren't ordinary documents, they bore cuneiform contracts with the gods themselves, listing the consequences for kings who might later alter the structure. One chilling example from Ashurbanipal's palace warns that any ruler removing these bricks would have his lineage wiped from the earth like scribbles in wet clay. The medium mattered as much as the message. Lead, resistant to corrosion, ensured the curse would outlast parchment or papyrus, while its placement in the gate, a structure constantly trafficked by thousands, meant the warning pulsed like a silent heartbeat beneath the city's daily life. Meanwhile, in China's Forbidden City, builders sealed lucky coins beneath threshold stones, but these were no ordinary currency. Examination of Ming Dynasty Foundation caches reveals coins deliberately minted with errors, misaligned stamps, inverted characters, even odd-numbered batches violating yin-yang balance. Researchers now believe these flaws weren't mistakes but a sophisticated anti-counterfeiting system. Since only imperial mints could legally produce defective coins, their presence beneath gates verified authentic construction, a bureaucratic fingerprint in bronze. The most ingenious concealment might come from the Maya, who turned their very mortar into a messaging medium. At Capon's hieroglyphic stairway, chemists detected traces of ground jade and cinnabar mixed into the limestone paste. These glittering additives served dual purposes. The jade's toughness reinforced critical structural points, while its green hue, visible only under microscope, marked sections containing astronomical equations. To casual observers, it was ordinary mortar. To trained scribes, it was a glowing roadmap to celestial knowledge. What these methods share is a profound understanding of human behavior. Ancient architects knew future generations would dig, renovate, or loot, so they hid truth in the last places we'd think to look, not in treasure chambers but in load-bearing walls. Not on golden tablets but in the floors of cheap coins. Their messages survived because they were disguised as mundane, proving that sometimes the best way to preserve wisdom isn't to shout it from rooftops, but to whisper it through the cracks in the floor. Beneath the soaring arches of Notre Dame, where tourists gaze upward at stained glass saints, the cathedral's true secrets lie face down in the dark. During restoration work after the 2019 fire, workers pried up a foundation stone near the choir and froze. Etched into its underside was an Ouroboros, the serpent eating its own tail, encircling a Latin phrase. Ignis aurum probat, fire tests gold. To medieval alchemists, this wasn't just decoration, it was a recipe. They believed sacred geometry and symbolic inscriptions could literally transform physical matter, turning cold stone into vessels of divine energy. The masons who built these cathedrals operated in a twilight world between mysticism and proto-science. Their alchemy wasn't mere superstition, it was applied physics. Take the serpent symbols found near Notre Dame's load-bearing columns. Modern materials science reveals that these areas contain iron-rich mortar, strategically placed to reinforce structural weak points. The snake, an alchemical emblem for transformation, may have been their way of encoding where base materials needed transmutation into stronger forms. Even the cathedral's famed rose windows align with foundation marks that mirror lunar cycles, suggesting these artisans understood something modern architects are only rediscovering. Buildings breathe, expand, and shift with celestial rhythms. Then there are the chillingly precise prophecies. Among the rubble of the spire collapse, researchers recovered a keystone marked with a peculiar sequence, a crescent moon, the numeral 9, and the word defectus, failure or cessation. Carbon dating places the stone's carving in the 13th century. Was this a dire warning left by builders who anticipated their masterpiece's vulnerability? Some scholars argue these markings represent alchemical timers, symbolic codes meant to degrade or activate under specific conditions. The moon symbol, for instance, might correlate with the wood's moisture content, a medieval way of predicting when centuries of saturation would weaken beams beyond repair. What makes these hidden messages extraordinary is their duality. The same marks that served as spiritual safeguards also functioned as structural diagnostics. A crosshatch pattern near the flying buttresses, once dismissed as a mason's idle scratching, was later found to mirror stress fractures observed in 20th century X-rays. These builders didn't separate science from symbolism. To them, mathematics was prayer and geometry was liturgy. When they carved planetary signs into foundation stones, they weren't just decorating, they were calibrating, using celestial patterns to counteract earthly forces like wind shear and gravity. The fire that nearly consumed Notre Dame in 2019 revealed one last layer of mystery. As flames licked the lead roof, molten metal dripped into cavities beneath the nave and triggered a chemical reaction. Analysis showed the runoff mixed with centuries-old alchemical compounds intentionally placed there, creating a fire-resistant alloy that saved critical supports. Was this luck, or did the original architects anticipate even this? Their hidden marks suggest they understood something we're only now grasping. That true preservation requires planning not just for years, but for millennia. And sometimes the only way to speak across those vast stretches of time is to write in the language of flame and stone. The massive stone faces of Easter Island have stared silently across the Pacific for centuries, but their greatest secrets don't gaze upward. They're hidden beneath the earth, carved into stones no living eyes were meant to see. When archaeologists first excavated around the Moai, they uncovered slabs covered in intricate glyphs, pressed face down into the soil like buried pages of a forbidden book. This was Rongorongo, the island's lost script, a language so sacred that only a select few elders ever learned to read it. But why engrave creation myths and star charts only to flip them into darkness? The answer reveals a civilization's desperate struggle against extinction. These weren't casual carvings. The glyphs form a complex system of interlocking symbols, fish hooks morphing into waves, birdmen dissolving into celestial patterns. Some tablets detail precise navigation routes across thousands of miles of open ocean, knowledge critical for survival on the world's most isolated inhabited island. Yet instead of displaying this wisdom, Rapa Nui's ancestors sealed it underground, often beneath the platforms supporting their iconic statues. One prevailing theory suggests this was cultural triage. As deforestation and warfare ravaged the island in the 17th century, elders may have buried their most vital knowledge to protect it from rival clans or simply from being lost as society collapsed. The glyph's physical placement tells an even deeper story. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs chiseled boldly onto temple walls, Rongorongo inscriptions were often etched into fragile wood or soft volcanic rock, materials easily destroyed by weather or conflict. Burying them wasn't just concealment, it was preservation, using the earth itself as a protective vault. Some slabs were even placed in precise alignment with solstice sunrises, suggesting the islanders viewed these hidden texts as living entities needing celestial activation. Most haunting are the glyphs depicting the island's creation myth, the story of how the first king, Hotu Matar, navigated to Rapa Nui using only the stars. By burying these origin stories beneath the Moai, the islanders may have been performing a kind of spiritual reinforcement, anchoring their identity to the land itself. When Dutch explorers arrived in 1722, they found a society that had forgotten how to read its own sacred script. Those inverted glyphs became a tragic irony, a civilization's most important words pressed silently against the dirt, waiting for readers who would never come. Perhaps the most startling discovery came in 2019, when multispectral imaging revealed previously invisible glyphs on the undersides of several statues. These weren't just texts, they were mirrors. Certain Moai had their Rongorongo inscriptions positioned to reflect specific constellations when viewed from secret vantage points during equinoxes. The island's architects didn't just hide knowledge, they encoded it into an interactive celestial interface where truth revealed itself only under the right cosmic conditions. What emerges from these buried tablets is a portrait of people who understood fragility. The Rapa Nui didn't trust their culture's survival to memory or monuments alone. They wrote their history where only the desperate or devoted would dig, not in the language of conquerors, but in symbols that whispered across generations. Today, as linguists painstakingly reconstruct Rongorongo's meanings, we're left with a humbling thought. Sometimes the most vital messages aren't meant to be seen. They're meant to be sought. At the heart of Chichen Itza, where the pyramid of Kukulkan casts its serpentine shadow during equinoxes, a discovery rewrote our understanding of Mayan foresight. Deep within its foundation, archaeologists uncovered jade tablets, not ornaments, but celestial almanacs. One tablet's inscriptions detailed the now famous 2012 prophecy, marking the end of a 5,125-year cycle. But the real revelation lay in the other tablets, which didn't just predict solar eclipses, they mapped them with precision down to the hour, using calculations so accurate they rival modern astronomy. Why bury such vital knowledge? The answer may lie in the Mayan concept of time as a spiral rather than a line. Their long count calendar didn't predict doom, it signaled renewal points, moments when history might rhyme. The eclipse tablets functioned like cosmic road signs, warning future civilizations about periods of celestial upheaval. One inscription describes the sun, swallowed by the jaguar, a metaphor for eclipses, accompanied by instructions for rituals to strengthen the sky. This wasn't superstition, it was a survival manual. During solar eclipses, the abrupt darkness could trigger panic or crop failures. By encoding these events in stone, the Mayans gave their descendants tools to prepare. The jade tablet's placement reveals even deeper intent. Unlike surface carvings meant for public awe, these were sealed beneath the pyramid's northwest corner, aligned with the path of Venus. Mayan astronomers knew this evening star held the key to eclipse prediction, as its cycles intersected with solar and lunar patterns. The tablet's texts form a step-by-step guide. Track Venus for 8 years, note its positions against specific constellations, and you'd unlock the eclipse code. It's as if the architects distilled an entire observatory's knowledge into portable form, ensuring it would survive even if their cities fell. Yet the most haunting tablet remains untranslated. Dubbed the Weaver's Codex, its glyphs show a sequence of eclipses stretching thousands of years beyond 2012, interspersed with symbols for choice points and forked paths. Some researchers believe it outlines alternate futures, not prophecies but possibilities. The Mayans may have viewed time as a tapestry where human actions could alter the weave. By burying these tablets, they weren't just leaving warnings, they were offering tools to reshape destiny. Modern astronomers confirm the tablet's eerie accuracy. One eclipse prediction from the year 639 matched totality to within 7 minutes, a margin of error smaller than many medieval European calculations. But the real lesson isn't just in their precision, it's in their humility. The Mayans, masters of celestial mechanics, still doubted their surface monuments would endure. So they hid their wisdom where only those who valued knowledge enough to dig would find it proof that true foresight means planning not just for tomorrow, but for civilizations yet unborn. Buried beneath the Shang dynasty's grand temples, ox scapulars and tortoise shells whispered secrets of the divine until they were pulverized into powders sold as cures for headaches. These oracle bones, etched with the earliest known Chinese writing, began as sacred conduits between kings and gods. Emperors would carve their most urgent questions into the bone. Will the harvest flourish? Should we march to war? Then apply scorching rods until cracks spider-webbed across the surface. Priests interpreted these fractures as celestial replies, recording outcomes in meticulous script. For centuries, these bones rested undisturbed in temple vaults, their messages considered too potent for mortal eyes. Yet by the 19th century, they'd been exhumed, sold in apothecaries as dragon bones, ground into remedies for ailments their inscriptions never foresaw. The journey from sacred artifact to commodity reveals a startling shift in cultural priorities. During the Shang era around 1600 BCE, only the king's diviners could handle these bones, storing them like state secrets. Their inscriptions weren't mere predictions, they were transactional records, often noting whether the god's promises came true. One bone from the reign of Wu Ding meticulously documents a divination about childbirth, then adds a postscript confirming the queen indeed bore a daughter. This wasn't mysticism, it was early empiricism, a way to track which rituals yielded results. So how did objects once housing royal dialogue with the cosmos end up in medicine jars? The answer lies in layers of forgetting. As the Shang dynasty fell, later rulers like the Zhou dismissed these practices as superstition, leaving caches of bones to crumble in forgotten cellars. Over millennia, erosion and construction scattered fragments into riverbeds and fields, where farmers mistook them for fossils. By the Qing dynasty, pharmacists prized their porous texture as an ideal binder for herbal concoctions, marketing them as relics of mythical dragons, creatures synonymous with potency in Chinese medicine. The very inscriptions that once held kings' fates became irrelevant scratches, their language unrecognizable after 3,000 years. Yet the twist came in 1899, when scholar Wang Yang noticed strange markings on bones sold in a Beijing pharmacy. His epiphany that these were ancient characters sparked an archaeological frenzy. Suddenly, apothecaries became treasure troves, with dealers scrambling to recover fragments from mortar parts. Tragically, countless bones had already been consumed, their messages dissolving in the stomachs of the sick. What makes this story resonate isn't just the irony of sacred texts becoming digestible tonics. It's the fragility of meaning itself. The Shang emperors never imagined their celestial hotline would one day be valued not for its words but for its calcium carbonate. And perhaps that's the most humbling lesson these bones offer, that no message, no matter how carefully inscribed, is immune to time's alchemy. The way it can transmute the divine into the mundane and history into something you swallow with tea. There's a profound power in what isn't immediately seen, the way hidden knowledge transforms perception, turning ordinary stone into something sacred. Ancient architects understood this psychology intimately. When they carved symbols beneath temple floors or sealed prophecies within walls, they weren't just preserving information, they were architecting an experience. For initiates, uncovering these messages was a rite of passage, a moment where the mundane world cracked open to reveal divine truths. Imagine a young priest in Egypt, candle in hand, tracing his fingers over hieroglyphs unseen by the masses. That intimate act of discovery didn't just educate, it transformed him. He wasn't just learning, he was being entrusted with secrets that set him apart, binding him to the temple's inner circle with invisible threads of exclusivity. Yet for those outside the fold, the mere knowledge that hidden messages existed had its own magnetic pull. Pilgrims who'd never glimpsed the buried inscriptions still felt their presence, whispering through the stones like distant echoes. This duality was deliberate. Mystery magnified reverence. After all, how could a place not be holy if it held truths too potent for casual eyes? In India, rumors of encrypted Vedic hymns beneath temple plinths turned local shrines into pilgrimage sites. Visitors might never decode the texts, but the possibility was enough to inspire offerings, prayers, and unwavering devotion. Fear played its role too. Norse runestones warning of curses or Mayan crypts prophesying doom weren't just informational. They were psychological barriers, leveraging dread to protect sacred spaces better than any lock. Modern archaeology faces a tantalizing paradox. With ground-penetrating radar and spectral imaging, we can uncover more hidden messages than ever before. But can we ever truly grasp their original impact? When a 21st century scholar reads a deciphered foundation inscription, is it the same as when a Bronze Age initiate decoded it by torchlight? The words may be identical, but the context, the weight of revelation, is irrevocably altered. Take the Dead Sea Scrolls. Discovering them in a desert cave removed from their original liturgical setting strips away layers of meaning. We recover the text but lose the hushed anticipation of the initiate unrolling the parchment for the first time, the scent of temple incense still clinging to the fibers. Perhaps the most enduring lesson lies in the architect's understanding of human nature. By embedding knowledge where only the determined would find it, they ensured their messages would outlast not just time but indifference. A casual observer might admire a temple's facade and move on, but those who dug deeper literally and metaphorically were rewarded with truths that reshaped their understanding of the divine. In an age of information overload where answers are a click away, there's something almost revolutionary about the idea that real wisdom might still lie buried, waiting for those willing to search. Rosslyn Chapel's stone pillars don't just stand, they hum with secrets. Carved into the crypt's shadowy recesses, a riot of symbols defies easy explanation. Crosses tangled with rose vines, Norse runes bleeding into Hebrew letters, even a figure that could be the Green Man or John the Baptist depending on the angle of your torchlight. But the real enigma lies beneath the floor, where 14th century masons etched a grid of geometric patterns so precise, modern laser scans reveal hidden alignments with constellations not visible from Scotland until centuries later. This isn't random artistry, it's a multi-layered cipher, a puzzle box in stone. One compelling theory ties these carvings to the Knights Templar, who allegedly fled to Scotland after their 13th century persecution. Among the chapel's most tantalizing features is the apprentice pillar, its surface swirling with carvings of wheat stalks and alchemical symbols. Beneath its base, ground-penetrating radar detected a hollow chamber containing metal objects, possibly the Templars' legendary treasure. But here's where it gets strange. The pillar's dimensions encode the exact latitude of Rennes-le-Château, the French village linked to Holy Grail myths. Were the builders leaving breadcrumbs to a sacred relic, or was this a red herring to distract treasure hunters? Then there's the musical angle. In 2006, composer Stuart Mitchell made an astonishing claim. The chapel's ceiling cubes weren't mere decoration, they represented Chladni patterns, the geometric shapes formed by sound vibrations. By assigning musical notes to each cube based on their spacing, Mitchell reconstructed a medieval melody he called the Rosslyn Motet. Skeptics dismissed it as coincidence until 2010, when physicists confirmed the cube's proportions matched 13th century harmonic ratios. If correct, this would mean the chapel's very stones could sing when struck, a literal frozen hymn. The most haunting possibility, Rosslyn's symbols might be none of these things alone, but all of them simultaneously. Like a medieval multitool, each carving served different purposes for different audiences. To a Christian pilgrim, the vines symbolized Christ's passion. To a pagan, they honored the earth cycles. For a Templar initiate, they might have marked a safe house on an underground railroad fleeing persecution. This intentional ambiguity wasn't confusion, it was survival. In an era when possessing the wrong scripture could mean execution, hiding meanings in plain sight let knowledge endure. What makes Rosslyn unique isn't just its symbols, but their stubborn refusal to yield a single interpretation. 5 centuries of scholars, mystics, and codebreakers have scoured its stones, each generation finding new layers. Maybe that's the builder's true masterpiece, not a map or a melody, but a mirror. The longer you stare into its carvings, the more they reflect not just the past secrets, but our own relentless need to seek them. Beneath the Pyramid of the Sun, where tourists climb steps worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, a discovery redefined Teotihuacan's legacy. LiDAR scans pierced through layers of volcanic rock, revealing sheets of gold foil no thicker than a maple leaf, each etched with delicate Nahuatl verse. At first glance, the inscriptions read like sacred poetry, odes to Quetzalcoatl's feathers, metaphors comparing dawn to a jaguar's breath. But when linguists pieced together fragments, they uncovered something far more startling: coordinates. Not in numbers, but in celestial imagery, a stanza referencing Venus rising, where the serpent drinks from the mountain's shadow, matched an actual alignment with Cerro Gordo, a nearby peak. Another described the place where time folds, corresponding to a hidden chamber's location within the pyramid itself. This wasn't just ritual. The Aztecs, who revered Teotihuacan as the city where gods were made, believed gold carried the sun's essence, a divine conductor. By embedding these foils beneath their holiest site, they may have been constructing a metaphysical circuit, channeling cosmic energy, but the real genius lies in the dual purpose. The same verses that invoked gods also functioned as spatial markers. Take the Fifth World references. Mesoamerican cosmology held that 4 previous eras had ended in catastrophe. The gold codes don't just describe this cycle, they map it onto the landscape, with each world represented by a specific site in the Valley of Mexico. One foil even depicts a flood myth alongside measurements that, when scaled up, match the distance to ancient shoreline ruins near Templo Mayor. Why hide such intricate knowledge? The answer might lie in conquest. When Spanish forces looted Tenochtitlan in 1521, they melted countless gold artifacts into ingots, but they never thought to dig beneath pyramids. By encoding survival strategies in buried gold, Teotihuacan's architects ensured that even if surface temples fell, the wisdom to rebuild remained. Some scholars argue the treasure map interpretation is too literal, that the foils were less about physical gold than about preserving the intellectual wealth of a civilization under siege. The most tantalizing clue emerged in 2021 when researchers noticed a recurring glyph shaped like a hand holding a torch. In Nahuatl pictography, this symbolizes illumination, but it also appears in Aztec land deeds as a boundary marker. Following these glyphs placements leads to a network of underground springs, precisely the resources a displaced people would need to re-establish their society. Whether spiritual guide or practical blueprint, these gold codes reveal a culture thinking not in years but in millennia, embedding its resilience into the very earth. The real treasure wasn't the metal, it was the foresight to plant knowledge where only those who truly needed it would think to look. Deep within the towering stone pillars of Angkor Wat, where tourists marvel at intricate bas-reliefs, lies a secret library of the soul. Hollow chambers inside these massive columns cradle palm leaf manuscripts so delicate, even a breath could crumble them, yet they've survived 800 years of monsoons and war. The trick, a toxic shield. Monks coated each leaf in mercury, creating a barrier so lethal to insects that the texts remain pristine. But the real mystery isn't just their preservation, it's what happens when you read them aloud. These aren't ordinary scriptures. Written in Khmer and Pali, the sutras describe meditation techniques so advanced they border on esoteric science. One passage instructs practitioners to visualize lotus petals unfolding along the spine, correlating with modern neurology's understanding of the vagus nerve's role in relaxation. Another details rhythmic chanting at frequencies matching the Schumann resonance, the Earth's natural electromagnetic hum. Monks whisper that vocalizing these texts doesn't just calm the mind, it vibrates the body into alignment with hidden realms, a phrase scholars debate as either metaphor or literal doorway. The mercury itself hints at deeper knowledge. Ancient Cambodian alchemists called it silver blood, believing it could purify both metal and mind. Modern tests reveal the manuscript's coatings contain precise mercury-gold amalgams, a combination known to alter the metal's conductivity. Some researchers speculate this wasn't just pest control. It may have created a capacitor effect, storing vibrational energy from chanting in the pillar's hollow space. When French archaeologists first opened one column in 1910, they noted an eerie hum lingering in the chamber, as if the stone remembered centuries of whispered prayers. Most intriguing are the text's warnings. Certain sutras bear crimson seals advising they should only be recited near specific temple corners during solstices. Satellite imaging shows these spots align with underground water channels, natural amplifiers for sound. It's as if the architects engineered sacred hotspots where words could resonate with the earth itself. Today, monks still debate whether these were spiritual guidelines or acoustic blueprints, a way to harness Angkor's very stones as instruments for transcendence. What emerges from these mercury-sealed pages is a portrait of knowledge too potent to display openly. Unlike the temple's public carvings celebrating Hindu epics, these hidden sutras dealt in experiential truths, techniques that had to be earned through initiation. Perhaps that's why they were entombed in pillars, not just to protect them from insects, but to ensure only those who truly sought wisdom would brave the mercury's poison to find it. After all, the greatest teachings aren't always found in the light. Sometimes they wait in the dark between the lines, beneath the gold, inside the hollow bones of history itself. High in the Andes, where mist curls around Machu Picchu's stone terraces, the Inca left behind a language you could touch, but not read. Beneath the citadel's sun temple, archaeologists uncovered bundles of knotted cords called quippers, their vibrant threads twisted into intricate patterns. To Spanish conquistadors, these looked like primitive decorations, but what they dismissed as childish trinkets may have been the backbone of an empire that stretched 2,000 miles without a single written word. Quippers weren't just records, they were tactile poetry. Each knot's position, color, and even the direction of its twist carried meaning. Yellow cords might represent gold, red for soldiers, green for harvests. The spacing between knots could indicate numbers, while clusters of knots formed syllabic patterns resembling a kind of binary code. Imagine governing millions without paper or parchment, where every tax record, every battle plan, every sacred hymn existed as a symphony of strings. The Inca didn't just write their history, they tied it into existence. Recent breakthroughs suggest quippers were far more sophisticated than ledgers. One set discovered near Cusco contained knots mirroring the structure of Quechua, the Inca language, hinting at narrative potential. Another, found beneath a palace floor, had cords dyed with rare pigments from hundreds of miles away, a deliberate choice, as if the very materials whispered origin stories. Most astonishing, some quippers bear knot clusters that align with constellations visible during key agricultural festivals. These weren't mere accounting tools, they were celestial almanacs, woven bridges between earth and sky. How did an empire function without alphabets? The answer lies in the Quipucamayocs, the Inca's elite knot readers. Trained from childhood, these human libraries could run their fingers along a quipu's cords and recite census data, epic poems, even legal decrees. Spanish chronicles describe messengers sprinting along the empire's highway system, quippers swaying from their belts like swinging pendulums of knowledge. A single knot reader stationed in a provincial outpost could decode orders from the Sapa Inca in Cusco, then send back troop counts or grain stores, all without ink or parchment. The tragedy is how much we've lost. When the Spanish burned quippers as idolatrous objects, they didn't just destroy records, they severed a neural network. Today, researchers use spectral imaging to study faint dye traces and CT scans to map internal knot structures, hoping to reconstruct this 3D language. One tantalizing theory suggests surviving quippers might contain directions to lost Inca vaults, their knots forming a tactile map of hidden temples. Others believe certain cords encode medicinal recipes, their knot sequences mirroring the steps of ancient surgeries. What makes quippers extraordinary isn't just their ingenuity, but their humility. The Inca built Machu Picchu's walls with stones so precisely fitted, you can't slip a blade between them, yet they entrusted their most vital knowledge to fragile threads. Perhaps they understood that while stone endures, real resilience lies in adaptability. A quipu could be rolled up and carried through jungles, over mountains, across generations. And in the end, isn't that the truest test of a language? Not how permanently it's carved, but how far it can travel. The alignment of ancient temples with celestial events wasn't just about marking time. It was a language written in sunlight and starlight, a code etched into the very bones of sacred architecture. Take Egypt's Dendera temple, where the famous zodiac ceiling maps the night sky with eerie precision. At first glance, it's a beautiful snapshot of constellations, but look closer. The positions of Taurus and Orion don't reflect the sky of the Greco-Roman period when the temple was built. Instead, they mirror the heavens as they appeared nearly 2,000 years earlier, around 4000 BC. This wasn't a mistake. The priests of Hathor were preserving a celestial memory, a snapshot of the cosmos from a mythical golden age when gods supposedly walked the earth. Then there's Ireland's Newgrange, older than Stonehenge or the pyramids. Its narrow passageway acts like a cosmic timepiece, designed so that on the winter solstice, a single beam of sunlight pierces the darkness to illuminate the inner chamber for exactly 17 minutes. But here's the twist. Modern laser scans reveal hidden grooves along the passage walls that once held wooden panels. These could be adjusted to filter the sunlight into specific patterns, perhaps projecting symbols onto the chamber walls like a prehistoric slide show. Were these light shows mere rituals, or did they encode knowledge about agricultural cycles, warning of coming famines or floods? The Maya took this celestial coding even further. At Capon's Temple of the Inscriptions, stairway glyphs don't just record kings' reigns, they track Venus's 8-year cycle with jaw-dropping accuracy. One series of steps counts the days between the planet's appearances as morning and evening star, while hidden alcoves beneath the temple hold star charts carved into jade. These weren't passive observations. The Maya believed Venus, or Kukulkan, directly influenced earthly events from harvests to wars. By embedding these cycles into their architecture, they weren't just predicting celestial movements, they were attempting to harmonize human destiny with the cosmos. Perhaps most intriguing are the star shafts inside the Great Pyramid. These narrow tunnels, long dismissed as ventilation ducts, align with specific stars. One points to Orion's belt, another to the pole star Thuban as it appeared in 2500 BC. But recent robotic probes discovered miniature copper tools and ritual objects hidden deep within these shafts, offerings placed where no human could ever retrieve them. This suggests the shafts weren't just sightlines but symbolic pathways, guiding the pharaoh's soul to specific celestial destinations in the afterlife. What unites these examples is their layered purpose. On one level, they're incredibly precise astronomical tools, capable of predicting eclipses or solstices centuries in advance. But they are also something more profound. Three-dimensional prayers, attempts to anchor human existence to the eternal rhythms of the universe. The real message hidden in these alignments isn't just look up, it's remember, you belong to something vast. And in an age where we've traded star charts for smartphone screens, that might be the most revolutionary idea of all. Buried beneath the ruins of Ur's great ziggurat, a set of cracked clay tablets holds celestial secrets that defy explanation. These Sumerian star charts, pressed into clay over 4,000 years ago, don't just track the moon's phases, they map the precise movements of Venus with accuracy that would stump astronomers for millennia. One tablet, labeled the Venus Tablet of Amasajuka, records the planet's appearances and disappearances over 21 years, predicting its next transit nearly a millennium in advance. The math is so precise, modern simulations using NAS a day to confirm its predictions were off by less than a single day. How did a civilization without telescopes, without even glass lenses, achieve such astronomical precision? The answer may lie in the ziggurat itself. Unlike Egyptian pyramids or Greek temples, these step towers weren't just monuments, they were giant observatories. Priests would ascend to their rooftops at night, lying flat on their backs to chart the stars with nothing but knotted cords and sighting rods. By stretching strings between fixed points on the ziggurat's edges, they could measure angles between celestial bodies, creating a rudimentary but effective coordinate system. Some tablets even describe a device called a shadow stick, which tracked the sun's path by measuring the changing length of shadows throughout the year. This wasn't just observation, it was early applied geometry, a way to turn architecture into a calculating machine. But the real breakthrough came from their obsession with patterns. Sumerian astronomers noticed that Venus follows a predictable 8-year cycle, 5 periods as the morning star, 5 as the evening star, with each phase lasting roughly 260 days. By tracking these repetitions across generations, they built a database of celestial behavior so detailed they could extrapolate future events with startling confidence. One tablet from Sippar even corrects an earlier prediction, noting a minor discrepancy in Venus's orbit and adjusting future calculations accordingly, proof they weren't just guessing, but refining their models over centuries. The most haunting detail, these tablets weren't stored in royal libraries or displayed in temples. They were sealed in clay jars and buried beneath the ziggurat's foundation, as if the knowledge was too potent to leave exposed. Perhaps the priests understood that celestial cycles outlast empires, that their carefully compiled data might need to survive the collapse of their own world. And survive it did. When archaeologists unearthed these tablets in the 19th century, they weren't just holding ancient astronomy. They were holding a time capsule, a message from a civilization that looked to the stars and saw not just gods, but mathematics written across the night sky. What makes these charts extraordinary isn't just their accuracy, but their humility. The Sumerians didn't attribute Venus's movements to divine whim. They treated the cosmos as a system to be decoded. In an age where we rely on satellites and supercomputers, their achievements remind us that the most powerful tool in astronomy isn't technology, it's patience, the willingness to watch the sky for lifetimes until its patterns reveal themselves. And sometimes those patterns are best preserved not in the light but in the cool, dark earth beneath our feet. The Antikythera mechanism wasn't just an ancient artifact, it was a revolution hidden in corroded bronze. When divers first pulled this intricate device from a Roman shipwreck in 1901, they assumed it was a navigational tool, but decades later, X-rays revealed the truth, a complex system of 37 interlocking gears, precisely calibrated to track the movements of the sun, moon, and 5 known planets. This wasn't just a calendar, it was a mechanical cosmos capable of predicting eclipses decades in advance with accuracy that would rival modern astronomy. What's truly astonishing isn't just the mechanism itself, but the growing evidence that it wasn't unique. Scraps of parchment found beneath Delphi's temple describe moving spheres of brass and instructions for the dance of the heavens. Scholars now believe these fragments might be remnants of lost manuals, step-by-step guides explaining how to operate devices like the Antikythera. Imagine a priest in 4th century Greece, crouched in a torchlit cellar, turning bronze dials to align with upcoming celestial events. The mechanism didn't just calculate time, it orchestrated it, syncing religious festivals, agricultural cycles, and even political decisions with the rhythms of the universe. The real genius lies in the design choices. Unlike modern gadgets with disposable instructions, these manuals were buried like sacred texts. One theory suggests they were hidden not for secrecy, but for preservation. Delphi's priests knew their temple might crumble, but the earth would guard their knowledge. The Antikythera's gears even include a fail-safe, a pin and slot mechanism that subtly adjusts for the moon's elliptical orbit, a feature so advanced it wouldn't reappear in clockwork until the 1400s. This wasn't just engineering, it was a dialogue with eternity, a way to ensure that even if the device was lost, the principles behind it could be rediscovered. But here's the twist that haunts researchers. The mechanism's eclipse predictions include a cryptic symbol, a tiny glyph shaped like an eye with a tear. Some interpret this as a warning for weeping or calamity, linking eclipses to omens. Others argue it's a mathematical notation marking gravitational anomalies, evidence the Greeks understood celestial mechanics far earlier than we thought. Either way, the message is clear. This wasn't just a tool for marking time. It was a lens for reading destiny itself, whispering to future generations that the sky isn't just to be observed, it's to be decoded. Perhaps that's why these instructions were buried, not to hide them but to plant them, like seeds meant to sprout when the world was ready to understand their roots. Beneath the grand staircases of Persepolis, where the Achaemenid emperors once walked in jeweled slippers, a network of hidden chambers held objects that blurred the line between science and devotion. These celestial crypts, as archaeologists now call them, weren't filled with gold or weapons. They housed intricate bronze astrolabes and celestial globes, each marked with cuneiform labels proclaiming them gifts for the eyes of the sky gods. One particularly exquisite globe, discovered in 1964, maps constellations with such precision that modern astronomers could identify the exact night sky configuration from 2,500 years ago, the spring equinox of 522 BC, the year Darius the Great solidified his empire. The real mystery lies in their placement. Unlike temple treasures displayed to inspire awe, these instruments were sealed beneath 20 feet of stone, accessible only through narrow shafts aligned with specific stars. Ancient Persian texts describe a royal ritual called the tying of the sky, where kings would descend at midnight to converse with the celestial scribes. Some scholars believe this referred to using the astrolabes to calculate auspicious dates for coronations or battles, turning astronomy into a sacred technology of statecraft. A clay tablet from Susa even records an eclipse prediction that spared Cyrus the Younger's army from marching under an unlucky sky. But the globes tell a stranger story. Etched alongside familiar constellations are phantom stars, points of light that don't match any known celestial bodies. At first dismissed as artistic license, recent analysis suggests these might represent nova or supernova visible only temporarily. One cluster of ghost stars corresponds eerily with Chinese records of a guest star that blazed in the sky for months around 540 BCE. Were Persian astronomers tracking cosmic events so rare they became divine omens? The most compelling theory comes from the labels themselves. Unlike boastful royal inscriptions, these cuneiform notes are oddly humble phrases like, "May the gods find this calculation worthy," or "This model pleases Saturn." It's as if the rulers saw celestial mastery not as proof of their own power, but as a fragile pact with forces far greater. When Alexander burned Persepolis in 330 BC, he reportedly spared the underground chambers, not out of mercy, but because his own seers warned that the sky's gifts burn those who touch them with unclean hands. Perhaps that's the true lesson of these crypts. In an age when rulers claimed divinity, the Achaemenids buried their most sophisticated tools as offerings, acknowledging that even emperors knelt before the cosmos. The real power wasn't in controlling the stars, It was in recognizing that some mysteries remain forever beyond human grasp, and sometimes the most profound act of leadership is knowing what to leave buried. The concept of hiding sacred knowledge wasn't just about security. It was a spiritual safeguard, a way to ensure divine truths reached only those prepared to wield them responsibly. In Jewish tradition, King Solomon's temple wasn't merely a monument, it was a vault of mysteries. The Ark of the Covenant, said to contain the tablets of the Ten Commandments, wasn't stored in the open sanctuary. Instead, ancient texts describe a labyrinth of underground chambers beneath the temple's foundation, where the Ark's secrets along with other sacred artifacts were sealed away. Only the high priest could enter, and only after rigorous purification. This wasn't just about physical protection. It reflected a belief that some truths were too potent for casual exposure, that their power demanded reverence, not curiosity. The Gnostic Gospels take this idea further, speaking of seals placed upon hidden texts, not physical locks, but metaphysical barriers. The Gospel of Thomas, discovered in Nag Hammadi, describes wisdom as a treasure buried in a field, accessible only to those who dig with their hands and hearts. These seals weren't meant to conceal knowledge permanently, but to filter it, ensuring it resonated only with those who had undergone the necessary spiritual preparation. Imagine a sacred text that changes meaning based on the reader's awareness, its words shifting like a cipher unlocked by inner transformation. The Gnostics believed that reading such texts unprepared could distort their meaning, turning enlightenment into confusion, or worse, heresy. This raises a provocative question. Does exclusivity amplify spiritual potency? There's a psychological alchemy at work here. When knowledge is rare, it carries weight. The Eleusinian mysteries of ancient Greece, for instance, promised initiates visions of the afterlife, but only after years of preparation and rituals so secret that even today, we know only fragments of what transpired. The power of those rites didn't just come from the rituals themselves, but from the anticipation, the sheer force of knowing you were part of something few would ever experience. The same principle echoes in Freemasonry's layered degrees or Tibetan Buddhism's hidden teachings. By restricting access, these traditions didn't hoard wisdom. They heightened its impact, ensuring it struck with the force of revelation rather than the dullness of common fact. Yet there's a tension here. While secrecy can preserve purity, it can also breed distortion. The Dead Sea Scrolls, hidden in caves for 2 millennia, survived precisely because they were concealed, but their isolation also meant their teachings were nearly lost forever. The architects of these traditions walked a razor's edge, how to protect truth from corruption without burying it beyond recovery. Perhaps that's why so many hidden messages weren't just locked away but layered, like an onion waiting to be peeled. The surface might hold a parable, the middle a metaphor, and the core accessible only after years of study, the key to transcending both. What emerges from these traditions isn't just a strategy for preservation, but a philosophy of knowledge itself. Truth, they suggest, isn't inert. It's alive, responsive, and dangerous in unprepared hands, and so they built their libraries in the dark, trusting that when the seeker was ready, the light would find them, not the other way around. Chartres Cathedral's floor labyrinth isn't just a winding path for pilgrims. It's a conductive circuit humming with hidden energy. Beneath the famous black and white stones, medieval builders embedded a slender band of copper oxide, its verdigris hue tracing what modern dowsers call a green line. This isn't mere decoration. When researchers mapped its course, they found it aligns with ancient ley lines in visible channels believed to carry Earth's magnetic currents. To walk the labyrinth isn't just a spiritual exercise, it's stepping into a living energy grid, a fusion of sacred geometry and subterranean science. But the real genius lies in what the builders didn't leave behind, written blueprints. Instead, they carved geometric conundrums into the cathedral's very stones, interlocking circles, cryptic angles, even a stained glass rose window whose petals encode Fibonacci sequences. One pillar capital shows a master mason holding dividers over a diagram of Vesica Piscis, the almond-shaped intersection of two circles revered in sacred geometry. Were these visual puzzles left as a test, a way to ensure only those fluent in the language of shapes could restore or expand the cathedral's secrets? The green line itself holds tantalizing clues. French physicist Louis Charpentier discovered it reacts to lunar cycles, emitting faint electromagnetic pulses during full moons. Meanwhile, the labyrinth's 11 concentric circles mirror the proportions of Solomon's temple, while its path length 261.5 meters matches the Earth's axial precession cycle divided by 100. This isn't coincidence, it's celestial cartography rendered in stone and metal. Most enigmatic are the shadow codes. Certain carvings near the north porch act as sundials, but their markings don't align with modern timekeeping. Instead, they track the canonical hours, liturgical moments when prayers were believed to resonate most powerfully. During the summer solstice, sunlight strikes a specific fleur-de-lis carving, casting a shadow that points to a hidden chamber beneath the choir. Explorers in the 1960s found it lined with quartz crystals, their piezoelectric properties potentially amplifying the cathedral's acoustic resonance. What emerges from Chartres isn't just a building but a multidimensional cipher. The builders didn't write manuals, they crafted a tactile curriculum where every arch, every stained glass hue, every copper-infused stone was a lesson in sacred physics. Perhaps that's the ultimate test of their legacy, not whether we can decode their puzzles, but whether we recognize that true knowledge isn't just read. It's walked, measured, and felt in the bones of a place that still whispers its secrets to those who know how to listen. In the ancient stone synagogues of Safed, where the air hums with centuries of whispered prayers, the walls hold more than mortar, they pulse with hidden mathematics. Here, 16th century Kabbalists didn't just build places of worship, they engineered spiritual reactors, embedding gematria codes into the very foundations. Gematria, the Jewish practice of assigning numerical values to Hebrew letters, transforms words into equations. One such inscription, discovered beneath the Ari Ashkenazi synagogue's cornerstone, sums to 207, the exact value of Ein Sof, the Kabbalistic term for the infinite divine. But this wasn't just symbolic numerology. Mystics insist these formulas function like cosmic tuning forks, chant them correctly, and reality itself might resonate in response. Modern physicists are starting to listen. The Safed codes often appear in fractal-like geometric patterns, mirroring quantum entanglement models where particles influence each other across vast distances. One particularly intricate cipher, etched along a buried archway, spells out or Ein Sof, light of the infinite, in letters that, when rearranged, form the Hebrew word for string, uncannily echoing string theory's vision of vibrating filaments underpinning reality. Coincidence, perhaps, but when researchers from Jerusalem's Hebrew University measured acoustic resonance in these chambers, they found something startling. Chanting certain gematria sequences at specific frequencies produced harmonic overtones that matched the synagogue's architectural proportions, as if the building itself were designed to amplify these vibrations. The Ari Zal, Safed's most revered Kabbalist, taught that letters weren't just symbols, they were vessels of creation, the tools God used to speak the universe into being. In his seminal work, Etz Chaim, he describes how altering letter sequences could theoretically reshape matter. Centuries later, scientists experimenting with cymatics, the study of visible sound waves watched as Hebrew words like shalom, peace, formed symmetrical mandala patterns in sand, while others like chaos created dissonant splatters. The Kabbalists might not have known about waveforms or frequencies, but their insistence on the material power of language now finds eerie parallels in quantum field theory, where observation, and perhaps intention, can influence physical systems. Yet the most provocative codes lie beneath the Abu, have synagogue's floor. 3 concentric circles of gematria inscriptions form what scholars call the Jacob's Ladder matrix, a numerical representation of the celestial ladder from Genesis. Each rung corresponds to a sephira, divine emanation in the Kabbalistic tree of life, but when mapped onto a Cartesian plane, the values plot a perfect logarithmic spiral, the same growth pattern seen in galaxies and Nautilus shells. Mystics who meditate on these sequences report vivid visions of interconnected light, while mathematicians note the spiral's golden angle of 137.5 degrees matches the fine structure constant, a fundamental physical quantity governing electromagnetic forces. Whether mystical artifact or uncanny foresight, Safet's buried ciphers challenge our definitions of science and spirituality. They suggest a world where numbers aren't just descriptors but active participants, where chanting a sequence like Keter Malchut, crown of kingship, might not just describe divine harmony but momentarily invoke it. As quantum physicists grapple with consciousness's role in shaping reality, these stone-encased equations whisper an age-old idea that the boundary between prayer and physics might be thinner than we think. And sometimes the most profound truths aren't hidden in scrolls or stars, but in the silent spaces between letters and the vibrations they set loose in those who dare to utter them. Deep beneath the Torii gates of Japan's oldest Shinto shrines, smooth river stones whisper secrets older than written language. These aren't ordinary rocks, they're vessels for Kotodama, the belief that spoken words contain living spirits capable of shaping reality. When priests bury these stones, they inscribe them with sacred sounds ayuem, to ho kamai, then seal them in earth as if planting seeds of sound. The ritual, called Jindai Moji, dates back to a time when writing was considered too potent to expose to sunlight, so words meant for the gods were hidden where only the earth could hear them. What's startling isn't just the tradition, but the science emerging around it. Researchers from Kyoto University recently analyzed stones from Ai's Grand Shrine using laser vibrometry, a technique that measures microscopic vibrations. The results defied expectation. Even untuned, the stones emitted resonant frequencies between 110 and 136 Hz, the same range shown to reduce cortisol levels in humans and promote plant growth. When priests chanted the inscribed syllables over them, the vibrations synchronized into harmonic patterns resembling the Fibonacci sequence. Coincidence? Perhaps, but in Shinto cosmology, there's no such thing. The stone's placement reveals even deeper intentionality. At Izumo Taisha, Japan's oldest shrine, 81 Kotodama stones form a spiral beneath the inner sanctum, echoing the archipelago's shape. Each corresponds to a kami spirit and a phonetic sound together. They're believed to act as a stabilizing force for the land. After the 2011 Tohoku earthquake, priests from coastal shrines reported cracks in these stones, interpreting it as the Kotodama absorbing seismic trauma. Geologists remain skeptical, but seismographs recorded unusual low-frequency pulses emanating from shrine sites during aftershocks, pulses that matched the stone's resonant profiles. Modern linguists are uncovering another layer. The sounds inscribed Yamatu Suzu aren't random. They're Kototama no Ho, a Proto-Japanese language system where vowels represent elemental forces, A for sun, U for moon. When chanted in specific sequences, they create cascading phonetic patterns that mirror the syntax of protein folding in DNA. Some researchers theorize these aren't prayers at all, but sonic blueprints, a way to tune the environment through vibration, much like Tibetan monks use throat singing to manipulate sand into mandala patterns. The most profound lesson might lie in the stone's silence. Unlike Western traditions that broadcast scripture, Shinto hides its most sacred words in darkness, trusting the earth to amplify them. In an age of digital noise where words lose meaning through overuse, the Katadama stones remind us that language isn't just communication, it's creation. And sometimes the most powerful words are the ones we don't hear with our ears but feel in our bones. In the highlands of Ethiopia, where the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela rise like ancient sentinels, the earth holds secrets far older than the stones themselves. Beneath the cross-shaped floor of Beta Mariam, one of 11 monolithic churches carved entirely from volcanic rock, priests guard hollow chambers containing sacred tabots, wooden tablets inscribed with verses from the Bible. These aren't mere replicas. Tradition claims they're direct copies of the original Ark of the Covenant's commandments, imbued with such holiness that even glancing at them unprepared could unleash divine fury. Yet instead of displaying these treasures atop altars, they're buried underground, accessible only through narrow tunnels where pilgrims crawl on hands and knees. Why hide such power beneath the feet of worshippers? The answer lies in a paradox central to Ethiopian orthodoxy, that the divine is both omnipresent and dangerously volatile. The tabots aren't just symbols, they're conduits. Medieval texts describe how priests performing the Timkat festival would place their ears against the stones to hear the whispers of angels, while accounts from the 15th century tell of monks experiencing trances after touching the tablets, their visions revealing future droughts or invasions. This wasn't superstition, it was a carefully calibrated spiritual technology. By sealing the tabots in darkness, the architects of Lalibela created a threshold, a space where the sacred remained potent yet contained, like embers banked beneath ash. The churches themselves amplify this duality. Carved downward into the bedrock, their doorways aligned with solstice sunrises, they function as inverse towers, monuments not reaching toward heaven, but drawing celestial energy into the earth. During excavations in 2012, archaeologists discovered copper plates beneath Beta Georges's foundation, etched with geometric patterns matching the Seal of Solomon. When scanned with ultraviolet light, the metal showed traces of myrrh and frankincense, suggesting the plates once held aromatic resins that would vaporize when heated by ritual candles, filling the tunnels with sanctified smoke. But the most astonishing feature is the tabot's cryptographic dimension. Written in jade, the liturgical language of Ethiopia, their inscriptions aren't straightforward transcriptions. Certain letters are enlarged or inverted, forming acrostics that, when read vertically, spell out names of archangels or celestial coordinates. One tablet, now housed in the National Museum of Addis Ababa, contains a passage from Ezekiel with every seventh letter highlighted in vermilion pigment. Strung together, these letters form a secondary text describing a river of fire beneath the sanctuary, a possible reference to the region's volcanic activity. Was this a warning, a prophecy, or a map to something still hidden? Modern devotees still speak of the tabots with hushed reverence. During the 1980s famine, elders in Lalibela reported dreams of the tablets, glowing like molten bronze, urging them to dig new wells at specific sites, wells that later struck water in a drought-stricken region. Skeptics dismiss such accounts as coincidence, but the deeper truth may lie in the very act of concealment. By burying their holiest words, the builders of Lalibela ensured they'd never become mere artifacts. They remain living mysteries, pulsing beneath the souls of the faithful, reminding us that the most profound truths aren't always meant to be seen but to be sought, with knees scraped raw and hands trembling in the dark. Off the coast of Pohnpei, where the Pacific swells crash against ancient basalt columns, the ruins of Nan Madol hold a secret that hums with the rhythm of the tides. These massive stones, some weighing 50 tons, aren't just stacked, they're precision-tuned. During high tide, seawater rushes through narrow channels between the pillars, creating eerie, resonant frequencies that locals have called wave songs for centuries. But these aren't random echoes. According to Polynesian oral traditions, the sounds map hidden navigation routes across thousands of miles of open ocean, a sonic atlas for voyagers who could decipher their melodies. The science behind this phenomenon is as fascinating as the legend. Researchers analyzing the basalt columns discovered that their grooves and notches aren't erosion patterns, they're deliberate acoustic modifications. When specific tides flow at certain angles, the water's movement across these surfaces produces distinct harmonic sequences. One study found that the frequencies match the traditional chants used by Micronesian navigators to memorize star paths. A sequence of 3 rising tones, for example, might correspond to the celestial bearings for reaching Tahiti, while a deeper, pulsing rhythm could signal safe harbors. It's as if the stones were engineered to transform ocean currents into a living GPS. But the real mystery lies in how this knowledge was preserved without written language. Polynesian navigators practiced a technique called wayfinding, using the stars, winds, and even bird flight patterns to traverse vast distances. The wave songs of Nan Madol may have served as an auditory backup, a way to encode vital information in sound, ensuring it could survive even if oral traditions were interrupted. Imagine a master navigator teaching his apprentice not with charts, but by having them sit in the ruins during a full moon tide, memorizing the pitches that aligned with specific constellations. Recent experiments suggest the vibrations might do more than transmit data. They could physically alter the space. When archaeologists played recordings of the wave songs inside the ruins, they noticed something peculiar. The sound waves caused fine sand particles on the stone surfaces to arrange into intricate geometric patterns, mirroring the traditional stick charts used by Polynesians to map ocean swells. This hints at a lost technology where architecture, acoustics, and oceanography merged into a single navigational tool. What makes Nan Madol's songstones so extraordinary isn't just their ingenuity, but their humility. Unlike the grand steles of Egypt or the gold tablets of Mesoamerica, these messages weren't meant to dazzle future civilizations. They were practical, ephemeral, activated only when the sea itself chose to sing them. And perhaps that's the most profound lesson, that some truths aren't carved in stone for eternity, but whispered on the wind, waiting for the right moment and the right listener to bring them back to life. Buried beneath the altar of Armenia's Etchmiadzin Cathedral, where the scent of centuries-old incense lingers in the stone, rests a parchment so extraordinary it defies belief. Tucked inside the 4th century cornerstone, this fragile document known as the Noah's Notes, it isn't just a relic, it's a survival manual for the end of the world. Written in ancient Armenian and Aramaic, the text details everything from how to store seeds in pitch-sealed jars to the precise dimensions of a vessel that could weather waters rising higher than the peaks of Ararat. But here's what's truly startling. These aren't abstract prophecies. They're hyper-specific instructions, as if the scribes weren't imagining catastrophe. They were preparing for its inevitable return. The notes' practicality is what makes them so haunting. One passage describes fermenting wine in buried amphorae to preserve it during prolonged flooding, a technique modern scientists confirm would prevent spoilage in anaerobic conditions. Another section outlines a method for calculating rising water levels using marked poles and lunar cycles, a primitive but effective early warning system. These aren't the vague warnings of doomsayers, they're the meticulous observations of a culture that had already endured devastation. The Armenian highlands, after all, sit atop seismic fault lines where floods, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions have reshaped civilizations for millennia. Why hide such vital knowledge in a cathedral's foundation? The answer lies in the Armenian concept of kochkars, or cross-stones monuments that serve as both spiritual markers and historical archives. By sealing the notes within the church's literal cornerstone, the builders weren't just preserving information, they were sanctifying it. In Armenian tradition, the church isn't just a place of worship, it's a living ark, a vessel designed to carry faith and knowledge through the storms of history. The act of burial transformed the notes from mere text into sacred covenant, as if the stones themselves were whispering, "Remember what was lost, prepare for what may come." Modern climatologists have noted eerie prescience in the note's details. One passage warns of rains that scald like broth, a description chillingly similar to the hyperacidic rainfall that follows volcanic winters. Another references the great drying after the floods, a nod to the prolonged droughts that often follow catastrophic deluges. Some scholars argue these aren't mythological flourishes, but encrypted memories of actual events passed down from survivors of ancient disasters. The notes even include star charts for navigation when the landmarks drown. With constellations adjusted for precession evidence, the information was refined across generations. Yet the most profound lesson of Noah's notes isn't their practicality, it's their philosophy. Unlike apocalyptic texts that focus on doom, these instructions emphasize continuity. There are diagrams for grafting fruit trees onto flood-resistant rootstock, recipes for medicinal herbs that thrive in wetlands, even guidelines for repurposing ship timbers into plows. The message is clear: survival isn't just about enduring catastrophe, it's about laying the groundwork for what comes after. In an age of climate uncertainty, where rising waters and extreme weather dominate headlines, these ancient whispers feel less like relics and more like a mirror, asking us what we're burying today for the survivors of tomorrow. High in the Himalayas, where the air thins and prayer flags flutter like whispers against the sky, Tibetan monks have been burying knowledge not just for the present but for futures they would never see. These hidden texts, known as terma, aren't ordinary scriptures. They're time capsules of wisdom sealed inside caves, statues, and even the hollowed-out trunks of ancient juniper trees, waiting for the precise moment when the world needs them most. Some describe fantastical machines that soar through the air like iron birds. Others detail global upheavals, wars fought with fire that falls from the heavens, or plagues that travel faster than the wind. To dismiss these as mere mythology is to miss their chilling precision. A terma uncovered in the 1980s, for instance, spoke of a time when men would carry talking stones in their palms, their faces lit by cold blue light, centuries before smartphones bathed our hands in glow. The process of hiding terma is as deliberate as their contents. Masters of the Nyingma tradition, known as Turton's treasure revealers, don't simply choose random locations. They follow visions, dreams of subterranean chambers marked by symbolic colors or landscapes shaped like mandalas. One 14th century text, the Copper Temple Scroll, instructs seekers to look for a cave where 3 rivers of shadow cross, its entrance guarded by a stone tiger with eyes of quartz. In 1998, a landslide near Lhasa exposed just such a site, a grotto hidden behind a boulder carved with feline features. its interior lined with copper plates etched with diagrams of celestial mechanics. The plates didn't just depict stars, they mapped planetary orbits with mathematical notation so advanced, modern astrophysicists struggled to decode it. But here's where it gets even stranger. Not all terma are physical. Some exist as mind treasures, telegraphic bursts of knowledge psychically downloaded by Tertans during meditation. The late Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, one of Tibet's most revered masters, described receiving a terma this way in 1944, a flash of syllables that unfolded in his consciousness like a scroll, detailing a coming age of mirrors where humanity would confront its own illusions. Skeptics dismiss such accounts as hallucination, yet the predictions embedded in these mental terma often parallel those found in physical caches. A recurring motif across both is the concept of shunyata emptiness, not as nihilism, but as a warning against mistaking technology for enlightenment. One text cautions that when machines think, men must remember to feel, a provocation that resonates uncomfortably in our era of AI and algorithmic isolation. The most haunting question isn't whether these texts predict the future literally, but why the act of concealment was deemed necessary at all. Tibetan Buddhism operates on cycles of kalpas, vast cosmic epochs where wisdom rises and fades like tides. By burying terma, the ancients weren't just preserving knowledge, they were planting seeds in the fabric of time itself, ensuring that when darkness fell, there would always be a lamp waiting in the earth. It's no accident that many terma are discovered during crises. When Chinese forces occupied Tibet in the 1950s, monks fleeing to India uncovered caches detailing methods to heal lands split by hatred. Among them were herbal recipes for trauma and meditation techniques tailored for refugees, as if the texts had been waiting centuries for that exact moment of rupture. Perhaps that's the true lesson of the terma. They challenge our linear view of history, suggesting that the past and future might be in conversation, with the present as their meeting ground. When a Tertan in the 1700s buried a scroll describing a net that binds all minds, was he envisioning the internet, or was the internet, in some strange way, answering his call? The terma don't just predict, they participate, and in their quiet darkness, they remind us that the most vital knowledge isn't always found in the light of day, but in the shadows where time folds back upon itself. Beneath the sun-baked streets of Malta, the hypogeum of Hal Saflieni cradles a secret older than the pyramids. This labyrinth of underground chambers holds the famous Sleeping Lady figurine, but her true mystery isn't just in her serene posture. Carved into the walls around her are alcoves shaped like human ears, their curved surfaces designed to catch and amplify whispers into unearthly echoes that linger for nearly 12 seconds. For comparison, even the grandest cathedrals rarely achieve reverberation beyond 4 seconds. The effect is haunting. Speak softly into one of these niches, and your words seem to hang in the air like smoke, distorting into something almost melodic. Archaeoacoustics researchers who mapped these chambers made a startling discovery. The frequencies that resonate strongest within the hypogeum, 110 to 130 Hz, match the natural range of the human voice during ritual chanting. But here's where it gets eerie. These same frequencies are known to alter brain activity, reducing stress hormones and inducing trance-like states. Modern sound therapists use similar vibrations to treat anxiety, while Tibetan monks employ them in overtone chanting to reach meditative states. Were Malta's prehistoric builders accidental neuroscientists, or did they intentionally engineer these chambers as portals to altered consciousness? The inscriptions offer clues. Symbols carved near the alcoves depict spirals within spirals, a motif found globally in sacred sites from Newgrange to Navajo petroglyphs. Linguists suggest these might represent sound vortices, a metaphor for how voices could theoretically be stored in stone. One particularly worn glyph shows a figure with an elongated neck, its mouth open toward a series of wavy lines. Local folklore calls this the speaker to the dead, suggesting the chambers weren't just for rituals, but for literal communication with ancestors. The physics supports the legend. At certain pitches, two people standing in separate chambers can hear each other's whispers as if standing side by side, despite being 30 feet apart behind solid stone. What truly sets the hypogeum apart is its precision. The chamber's domed ceilings aren't rough-hewn, they're mathematically contoured to create standing waves, a technique modern concert halls struggle to perfect. One oval-shaped room, nicknamed the Oracle Chamber, amplifies bass tones so powerfully that a single drumbeat can vibrate the floor. During excavations in the 1930s, workers reported feeling the sound physically push against their chests like an invisible hand. Even more astonishing, the entire complex seems tuned to the frequency of the Earth's Schumann resonance, the electromagnetic heartbeat of our planet at 7.83 Hz. When singers hit this note, the walls themselves seem to hum in response. The sleeping lady's alcove holds the final piece of the puzzle. X-rays revealed hollow cavities beneath her resting place, filled with crushed limestone and seashells, an ancient sound-diffusing material akin to modern acoustic foam. This wasn't just a burial chamber, it was a carefully calibrated instrument. Some researchers believe the figurine's pose curled on her side with one ear pressed to the ground isn't sleep, but listening. Perhaps she wasn't meant to be seen at all, but heard. When struck gently, the statuette emits a pure tone at exactly 111 Hz, the frequency that triggers the brain's theta waves, the state between waking and dreaming. In these shadowed halls, the boundary between the living and the dead wasn't a metaphor, it was a resonance. The builders of the hypogeum didn't just carve stone, they sculpted sound itself, turning whispers into bridges across time. And as modern scientists peel back the layers of their acoustical genius, we're left wondering, were they honoring their ancestors or leaving messages for us? Beneath the towering stone heads of La Venta, where the Olmec civilization once thrived in the jungles of Mesoamerica, archaeologists made a discovery that blurred the line between myth and metallurgy. Embedded in the forehead of a 9-ton basalt jaguar sculpture, they found a fist-sized lodestone, a naturally magnetized rock, carved with glyphs depicting human figures mid-transformation, their limbs elongating into feline forms. Local Huastec shamans, who still guard these ruins as sacred sites, call them Nahual stones, tools for ritual shape-shifting passed down through generations. But were these artifacts symbolic representations of spiritual journeys, or evidence of a lost technology harnessing magnetism's effects on human consciousness? The lodestones themselves hold tantalizing clues. When researchers scanned them with magnetometers, they detected alternating polarities arranged in precise patterns, almost like a circuit board etched in mineral. One particularly intricate glyph shows a jaguar encircled by spiraling lines that, when overlaid with magnetic field maps, mirror the neural oscillations measured in modern brainwave studies during deep trance states. Contemporary shamans describe using the stones in ceremonies, placing them on specific body points to induce visions of becoming the jaguar. Skeptics dismiss this as hallucination, but neurologists note that transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS, can indeed alter perception, sometimes triggering out-of-body experiences. Could the Olmec have stumbled upon a proto-scientific understanding of biomagnetism? The rituals themselves add another layer. During the spring equinox, Huastec practitioners still reenact the glyphs' instructions, fasting for 3 days, then lying with the lodestone positioned at the base of the skull while chanting specific tonal sequences. Anthropologists recording these ceremonies observed participants entering states where their movements uncannily mimicked feline grace, not just symbolically, but with physical adaptations like heightened night vision and silent footfalls. One shaman, when asked how long the transformation lasted, replied, "As long as the stone remembers the jaguar's song, modern material science might hold the key." The basalt used for the colossal heads contains high concentrations of magnetite, a mineral known to interact with Earth's magnetic field. When researchers from Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology recreated the rituals using replicas, they found the stones emitted weak but measurable electromagnetic pulses at frequencies that could theoretically interfere with the brain's temporal lobe, the region associated with spiritual experiences. This doesn't prove shape-shifting exists, but it suggests the Olmec may have engineered tools to systematically alter perception, turning myth into measurable neurochemistry. What makes these glyphs extraordinary isn't just their potential scientific sophistication, but their cultural endurance. For over 2 millennia, through conquest and colonization, the knowledge encoded in those magnetized stones survived, not in libraries but in lived practice. Whether the transformations are psychological or supernatural hardly matters. The real magic lies in the stone's ability to bridge epochs, whispering to us across centuries that some truths aren't meant to be read but felt in the bones. Across the vast, sun-baked expanses of Australia, where the red earth stretches endlessly under cobalt skies, the Aboriginal people have preserved a secret map, not drawn on parchment or carved in stone, but woven into the very fabric of the land itself. These are the songlines, ancient pathways etched into the collective memory of countless generations. More than mere navigation tools, they're living narratives, sung into existence by ancestors during the dream time, the epoch when the world was shaped by spirits. Walk through the outback with an elder, and they'll trace invisible lines with their fingertips, their voices rising and falling in rhythms that mirror the landscape's contours. Each verse, each syllable, corresponds to a specific rock, waterhole, or mountain, forming an intricate oral atlas that can guide travelers across thousands of miles without a single physical marker. What's astonishing isn't just the songline's precision, but their duality. At sacred sites like Uluru or Kakadu, rock engravings depict the same stories sung in these ancestral songs, spirals that trace the path of the rainbow serpent, dots clustering like star maps, or footprints vanishing into the horizon. To outsiders, their art; to initiates, their waypoints. When elders sing these verses, they're not just recounting myths, they're activating what they call the land's memory. It's as if the earth itself listens, resonating with the vibrations of the human voice to reveal hidden springs, safe passages, or warnings of danger. Modern geologists have noted uncanny correlations between songline routes and subtle geological features, magnetic anomalies, underground water flows, even mineral deposits. Could these songs encode millennia of environmental observation disguised as poetry? The mechanics of songlines challenge Western notions of navigation. Unlike Euclidean maps with fixed coordinates, these tracks are relational. Their accuracy depends on the singer's connection to country. A songline for the same route might vary between clans, yet all lead unerringly to the destination. It's a bit like quantum physics. The path exists as a probability until observed, or in this case, sung into certainty. Anthropologists recorded one remarkable example in the 1970s, when a group of Warlpiri men navigated a 300-mile journey through featureless desert using only a songline. At each pause, they'd sing the next segment and without hesitation choose the correct direction. When asked how they knew, one elder simply tapped his chest and said, "The land sings back." But songlines aren't just about physical travel, they're temporal too. Certain stanzas are said to mark celestial events, like the rising of the Pleiades, signaling when to harvest bush tomatoes or when monsoon rains will arrive. In 2018, astrophysicists compared songline descriptions of star movements with astronomical models and found they accurately tracked precession, the slow wobble of Earth's axis over millennia. This suggests the songs aren't static but evolve, with each generation subtly adjusting the rhythms to keep pace with the sky's gradual shifts. The implications are staggering, an oral tradition so precise, it functions as a self-correcting ephemeris, a living almanac written in sound and stone. Perhaps the most profound layer is the ecological wisdom embedded in these songs. Lyrics often describe animal behaviors preceding earthquakes, or plants that bloom before droughts, phenomena modern science is only beginning to document. In Arnhem Land, a songline about the sorrow of the cockatoos warns of water sources turning toxic, a reference to rare algal blooms. Another, sung along the Kimberley coast, details tidal patterns that reveal the safest times to fish. This isn't just navigation, it's a dialogue with the environment, a continuous feedback loop between people and place. What makes songlines extraordinary isn't their antiquity, but their adaptability. In an age of GPS and satellite imagery, they're still used not as relics but as vital, evolving knowledge systems. When Aboriginal rangers today sing to locate endangered species or predict bushfires, they're not practicing folklore. They're accessing a paleo-scientific database, one that treats the land not as a resource but as a teacher. And in that silent exchange between voice and earth, there's a challenge to our modern hubris, that perhaps the oldest maps aren't the least accurate but the most alive. Ground-penetrating radar and LiDAR scans have peeled back the Earth's layers like never before, revealing hidden chambers beneath Egypt's Saqqara complex and rewriting the timeline of Cambodia's Angkor Wat. Yet for every discovery, a dozen mysteries deepen. Consider Turkey's Göbekli Tepe, where 12,000-year-old pillars loom with intricate carvings of scorpions, foxes, and vultures, each animal positioned not randomly, but in deliberate astronomical arrangements. One pillar's constellation of creatures mirrors the night sky during the Younger Dryas period, a time of catastrophic climate shifts. Were these carvings merely decorative, or did they encode survival knowledge for civilizations weathering an ice age? The site predates agriculture by millennia, forcing archaeologists to confront an uncomfortable question. Did temple building come before cities, before farming, before what we call civilization itself? The real shock isn't just what we found, it's how much remains untouched. In Peru, drone surveys identified over 50 buried structures near Machu Picchu, their foundations aligned with solstice sunrises. One anomaly, nicknamed the hummingbird for its wing-shaped walls, contains voids that echo at frequencies known to induce trance states. Yet funding constraints mean most sites languish unexcavated, their secrets locked beneath centuries of soil. Even at Stonehenge, where laser scans revealed axe-head carvings invisible to the naked eye, less than 20% of the surrounding landscape has been systematically studied. Hidden beneath parking lots and farmland could lie the very clues that explain why this barren plain became a sacred nexus for Neolithic Europe. Then there are the enigmas that defy even our most advanced tools. In India's Tamil Nadu, sonar detected a massive rectangular structure beneath the Gulf of Mannar, possibly the fabled city of Pumpuhar, swallowed by rising seas 7,000 years ago. Local fishermen have long reported pulling up pottery shards in their nets, their glazes matching descriptions from ancient Sangam literature. but the site's depth and strong currents make excavation nearly impossible, leaving its stories suspended in the dark water. Similarly, beneath Rome's bustling streets, thermal imaging shows labyrinthine tunnels snaking under the Colosseum, their walls scrawled with Christian and pagan symbols layered like palimpsests. Are these the secret meeting places of persecuted cults, or evidence of a forgotten underground network linking temples across the empire? The most tantalizing puzzles come from mismatches between myth and measurement. Maya codices describe a white road leading to the underworld dismissed as legend until Dar exposed a 300-mile limestone causeway connecting temples across Guatemala's Patane jungle. In Egypt, radar detected a void behind Tutankhamun's tomb, matching the dimensions of Queen Nefertiti's burial chamber, suggesting pharaohs might have repurposed older, hidden tombs. Even more provocative are the acoustic anomalies. At Newgrange, Ireland's 5,000-year-old passage tomb, certain recesses amplify specific frequencies that modern studies link to enhanced memory retention. Was this intentional sonic engineering or a happy accident of Neolithic stonemasons? Perhaps the greatest lesson lies in humility. For all our satellites and scanners, we're still piecing together fragments of a puzzle whose full picture may always elude us. Each discovery, whether Göbekli Tepe's animal codes or Peru's hummingbird temple, doesn't just add to history, it rewrites the rules of what we thought possible. And somewhere beneath the unexcavated 80% of these sacred sites, the next revelation waits, not as a whisper but a